Welcome, curious minds, to a world of knowledge and discovery. Hello, YouTube friends. Join us as we unravel the mysteries surrounding Rockets rivalry. The Rockets rivalry is a National Basketball Association (NBA) rivalry between the Utah Jazz and the Houston Rockets. The rivalry began in the years when the Rockets, led by dominant center Hakeem Olajuwon and college teammate Clyde Drexler, and the Jazz, led by the pick-and-roll duo of Karl Malone and John Stockton, were playoff powers in the Midwest Division. The teams faced each other 4 times in the NBA playoffs during the decade. In all 4 instances, the winner was the eventual Western Conference champion and played in the NBA Finals. In 2007, the rivalry was restored as the 2 teams met again in the playoffs and a showdown of 2 of the best combos of Tracy McGrady and Ming of the Rockets and Deron Williams and Carlos Boozer of the Jazz. In 2018, the rivalry was once again restored as the 2 teams met in the Western Conference Semifinals, where the Rockets won the series. In 2019, the 2 teams met once again in the playoffs, but in the first round, with the Rockets once again winning the series. Let's zoom in on Stock, the mailman, and the dream arrive and understand its implications. The major players of both squads, Olajuwon, Drexler, Malone, and Stockton, were all drafted in the mid-years, an era in which many other great players were drafted, mostly in the same years as each other. Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler led the University of Houston's Phi Slama Jama squad to 3 Final Four appearances. Drexler was drafted in 1983 by Portland and traded to Houston during their championship run. Olajuwon was drafted first overall by Houston in 1984. John Stockton, on the other hand, was drafted 16th by Utah from Gonzaga in the same year and was relatively unknown at the time. The Jazz pulled off another draft steal when they selected Karl Malone 13th overall from Louisiana Tech University the next year. The first meeting in the playoffs between the Rockets and the Jazz was in the 1985 NBA playoffs. Houston, led by its twin towers of Ralph Sampson and Olajuwon, amassed a record in earning a second-place finish in the Midwest Division and the 3rd seed in the playoffs. Utah, tied for 4th in the Midwest with San Antonio, wound up as the 6th seed, reaching the postseason for only the 2nd time in franchise history. Utah, with Stockton, Adrian Dantley, and shot-blocking center Mark Eaton, who won the shot-blocking title and set all-time league records for total blocks 456 and blocks per game 5.6, defeated Houston and its Twin Towers in 5 games despite losing Eaton to an injured right knee. Brace yourself for a deep dive into 1994 NBA playoffs, Western Conference Finals as we explore its impact and relevance in our evolving narrative. The teams met in their first major clash with each other in the 1994 NBA playoffs. Olajuwon was widely considered not only the best post player in the league during an era of great centers, but ever since Michael Jordan's first retirement from the NBA, the best player in the league, winning both the NBA Most Valuable Player award and his 2nd consecutive NBA Defensive Player of the Year award for the season. Along with Otis Thorpe, Kenny Smith, Vernon Maxwell, Robert Horry, Mario Elie, and Sam Cassell, the Rockets proved to be a force in the Western Conference. They won the Midwest Division title with a record of. As the 2nd seed in the Western Conference, they ousted the Clyde Drexler-led Blazers 3-1, but had trouble with Charles Barkley's Suns, who won the first 2 games in Houston. The Rockets won the series 4-3. The Jazz, with their established duo of Malone, who finished 5th in the league with 25.2 points per game and topped 19,000 career points to move into 25th place on the all-time list, and Stockton, who led the league in assists for the 7th straight season with 12.6 assists per game, and the pick-and-roll offense also had Jeff Hornacek acquired in a trade with Philadelphia for Jeff Malone, veteran forward Tom Chambers, and center Felton Spencer to complement the 2 leaders. The team posed a challenge to the Rockets for the Midwest Division title when it won 10 straight games from late February to early March and then 8 of 9 games to finish the season. Utah defeated San Antonio 3-1, but received a scare from the Denver Nuggets, the 8th seed that upset first-seeded Seattle in the first round when a series lead for the Jazz evaporated into a series tie. The Jazz advanced to the Western Conference Finals for the second time in 3 years to face Houston. The Rockets won the first 2 games in Houston, then the teams split 2 games in the Delta Center in Salt Lake City. The Jazz won the first of the 2. Game 5 was held in Houston on May 31, 1994. The Rockets hit 8 three-pointers in the first 3 quarters to build a 24-point lead, but the Jazz came back in the fourth quarter and cut the lead to 8. Robert Horry and Olajuwon made clutch shots down the stretch to win it for the Rockets, claiming the Western Conference title, and sent the Rockets to the NBA Finals for the first time since. The Rockets won the championship against Olajuwon's old college rival, Patrick Ewing, and the New York Knicks in a 7-game series. Knicks home court hosted the New York Rangers' first Stanley Cup celebration in 54 years. The Rockets also denied New York City the distinction of having both NBA and NHL championships in the same year. In this section, we'll be peeling back the layers of 1995 NBA playoffs first round to reveal its true essence. The next year, the two faced off again, this time in the first round of the 1995 NBA playoffs. Houston struggled throughout much of the season and finished with a record of for the 6th seed in the West. On February 14, 1995, the Rockets traded Otis Thorpe to the Blazers for Clyde Drexler and Tracy. An injury to Karl forced him to miss most of the second half of the season and the entire postseason, and left the power forward position vulnerable. The addition of Drexler as a starter made former starter Vernon Maxwell frustrated enough to take a leave of absence. These issues provided fuel for critics of the Thorpe-Drexler deal. The Jazz ended the season on a high note with a record of then a franchise record, thanks partly to a 15-game winning streak on the road in December and January, the second longest such streak in NBA history. The starting 5 of Malone, Stockton, Hornacek, David Benoit, and Felton Spencer was solid, and the bench possessed key contributors in Adam Keefe, Antoine Carr, James Donaldson, Tom Chambers, and Blue Edwards. The major setback came on January 13, when Spencer suffered a torn left Achilles tendon, which took him out for the rest of the season and the entire postseason. Spencer was not an all-star, but he was still crucial to the Jazz's championship chances because he was a big body who could hold his own against the great centers in the Western Conference, especially against Hakeem Olajuwon. With the second-best record in the Midwest Division to the San Antonio Spurs, the Jazz ended up with the 3rd seed in the West. The Jazz barely won the first game in the Delta Center, but the Rockets beat the Jazz in Game 2 for a split in Utah. The series moved to Houston, where the Jazz won, going up in the series. The Rockets regrouped to win Game 4 to force a Game 5 at the Delta Center. In Game 4, Drexler scored 41 points while Olajuwon scored 40. Game 5 was a tightly fought contest. The Rockets defeated the Jazz and eliminated Utah for the second straight year. The Rockets repeated as champions, convincingly beating the Orlando Magic in the finals, and are the lowest seed to win the championship. The time has come to unravel the secrets behind 1997 NBA playoffs, Western Conference Finals, and gain a deeper understanding. The two clubs met again in the 1997 NBA playoffs, this time in the Western Conference Finals. For the first time in franchise history, Utah finished as the top Western Conference team with a 60-18 record, the best in franchise history, and stormed past both the Clippers and Lakers before meeting Houston. An off-season trade with Phoenix gave the Rockets Charles Barkley for Sam Cassell, Chucky Brown, Mark Bryant, and Robert Horry. Matt Malone manned the point as the only first-year player to start in all 82 games. Other key acquisitions included veterans Kevin Willis, Sebel Threatt, and Eddie Johnson to provide an already potent Rockets starting lineup, a deep bench. The Rockets finished second in both the Midwest Division and the Western Conference with a record and the 3rd seed. The Rockets swept the Minnesota Timberwolves in the first round and then survived a 7-game series with the Seattle Supersonics in the Western Conference Semifinals, avenging last year's sweep. The Rockets advanced to the Western Conference Finals, where the Jazz were waiting. Utah won the first 2 games at home in the Delta Center, while the Rockets responded at home with wins in Games 3 and 4, thanks to the heroics of Eddie Johnson, who scored 31 points off the bench in Game 3 and hit a buzzer-beating, game-winning three-pointer in Game 4 to even the series at 2. The Jazz won Game 5 at home. Stockton scored 15 of his 25 points in the fourth quarter to help the Jazz claw back from a 12-point deficit, including his most heroic effort at the final buzzer. After tying the game in the final minute, with time for one final offensive play, Brian Russell made the inbounds pass to Stockton. Malone set the pick, and this forced Malone's man, Barkley, to try to guard Stockton. But Barkley was too late, though he managed to get a hand in Stockton's face. Stockton buried the three-pointer. This spectacular winning play was performed off Utah's signature play, the pick and roll. Stockton's 3 gave the Jazz a victory over Houston and sent them on their first ever trip to the NBA Finals, where they lost to the Chicago Bulls in 6. Let's now venture into the realm of 1998 NBA playoffs, first round, and explore the fascinating intricacies it holds. They met each other in the first round of the 1998 NBA playoffs. The Jazz finished tied with the best record with Chicago at having swept the regular season series against the Bulls, guaranteeing home court advantage throughout the entire playoffs. However, the 8th-seeded Houston Rockets, who finished with a record of due to numerous injuries, nearly gave the Jazz a scare when the Rockets, led by Drexler's 22 points, won the first game in the Delta Center. After the Jazz won Game 2, the Rockets won a grinding Game 3, led by a team-high 28 points and 12 rebounds from Olajuwon. The Utah Jazz were now one loss away from becoming only the second first-seeded team to lose to an 8th seed. The Rockets looked poised to win the 4th game, but Charles Barkley received an elbow to his forearm, tearing a triceps muscle and ending his season. The Jazz won the last 2 games of the series over the sure-handed Rockets, ending the retiring Clyde Drexler's career. Now, let's shift our focus to ending era and rivalry and embark on an intellectual exploration of its various dimensions. After the retirements of Drexler, Barkley, and Olajuwon, the Rockets did not return to the playoffs until 2004, when a team of Yao Ming, Steve Francis, and Cuttino Mobley faced the Lakers, the team which Malone joined the last off-season to try and win a title. The previous year, Stockton retired. The Jazz ended its 20-year streak of postseason appearances. In 2007, everything changed. Get ready for a thought-provoking discussion as we delve into the return of the rivalry and its impact on our understanding. The return of the rivalry. The rivalry was restored in the 2007 season. Near the end of the season, the Jazz were holding the 4th best record in the Western Conference, but skidded and allowed the Rockets to have home court advantage during the playoffs. Pressure was on Rockets star Tracy McGrady with questions regarding if he could take the Rockets to the second round for the first time in his career. The pressure showed in Game 1 as he only scored 1 point in the first half with the Rockets down 9. He came out strong in the second half though, as he scored 16 points in the third quarter and finished with 23 as the Rockets took Game 1. Game 2 was a similar story as Houston won behind McGrady's 31 points and Ya's 27 despite Carlos Bouzer's career-high tying 41 points. The series shifted to Salt Lake City and the Jazz finally found their groove as they took Game 3, despite another impressive performance from Yao and T-Mac. The Jazz then tied the series with a victory in Game 4. The series went back to Houston for Game 5. T-Mac had one of the best performances of the series as he tallied 26 points and a career-high 16 assists as they took Game 5. McGrady was 1 game shy of winning his first playoff series. He had to wait as the Jazz took Game 6. The series shifted back to Houston for the crucial Game 7. Up to this point, the home team had won every game of the series. This would not hold up as the Jazz emerged victorious. Yao and McGrady each had 29, but it was not enough to overcome Boozer's 35 as the Jazz came back from a deficit for the first time in franchise history. The Jazz went on to the conference finals, but succumbed to the champion Spurs in 5 games. In 2008, the two teams faced each other again in the first round as the Jazz were the 4 seed and the Rockets were the 5 seed. The Rockets had home court advantage against the Jazz, but they were playing without Yao Ming, who suffered a stress fracture injury just months before the playoffs. The Jazz took the first 2 games in Houston and looked poised to sweep the Rockets at home, but the Rockets responded in Game 3, where in the final seconds Karl blocked Deron Williams' shot that could have won the game for the Jazz. After the Game 3 loss, the Jazz responded in Game 4 and took a lead. In Game 5, the Rockets outplayed the Jazz, but in Game 6, despite a 41-point performance by Tracy McGrady, the Rockets couldn't overcome injuries to starting point guard for Alston, as well as Yao, and McGrady was unable to get out of the first round again, falling for the second year in a row in the first round to the Utah Jazz. He would not play a game in the second round until 2013, despite the Rockets advancing in 2009. Which McGrady missed due to a season-ending injury. In this section, we'll be deep diving into 2018 and 2019 playoffs, unraveling its complexities and uncovering valuable insights. Both the Jazz and the Rockets underwent a rebuilding process at the start of the years. Carlos Boozer departed as a free agent, longtime Jazz coach Jerry Sloan resigned early in the season, and Deron Williams was traded away shortly afterwards. Meanwhile, Yao Ming's foot injuries led to his retirement after that season, while Tracy McGrady was traded away the season before. Under head coach Quinn Snyder and new additions Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, the Jazz returned to relevance by the end of the decade. The Rockets also returned to prominence behind James Harden, becoming a regular playoff participant since Harden's arrival in. Both teams met in the playoffs. In the 2018 playoffs, Houston entered as the top seed while Utah made it as the 5th seed after eliminating the Oklahoma City Thunder in the first round. In the 2019 playoffs, Houston and Utah faced each other in the first round as the 4th and 5th seed. In both occasions, the Rockets eliminated the Jazz in 5 games, but were then ousted by the Golden State Warriors in the next round. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel.